Keller,
Here.
Mr. Claus,
Here.
Mr. Cromer,
Here.
Mr. Skips,
Here.
Mrs. Welch,
Here.
Mr. Jacobson,
Here.
Mr.
Here.
Mayor, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, I'm here. Madam Clerk, would you lead us through the Pledge of Allegiance?
sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I will now do the invocation. We pray tonight that our spirit of this city is lifted up and the judgments that we make on behalf of our city going forward at a very, very important crossroads of growth. I was asked just here 2 weeks ago what that I consider the greatest challenge to our city. And I said growth, because with all growth, there shall be change, but with all change, you don't necessarily have growth. So I think growth that we meter out with our good judgment is the most important challenge to this city. And for this, I ask for us to pray that we do come together as a unified group and understand those challenges that are before us to make the right decisions. For this, I say amen. Going to go to section 4, approval of our agenda. You'll find it on pages 1 and 2. It's an action item.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion by Jacobson to approve the agenda, seconded by Santa.
Move to amend by removing old business 11B, dispute of customer utility bill.
Yes?
Second.
So we're removing item B, dispute of customer utility bill. It's been moved and seconded.
Weren't we supposed to consent the first one? A?
Yes. But he's saying that that's what I would ask. Would you like to amend that, Councilman Jacobson, that you want ordinance 2215 to be consented?
I want to hear what the attorney has to say, because I'm of a different opinion that when you have a budget ordinance in front
Oh,
of
we're
you.
not talking
No, no,
about new business. We're talking about 2215 qualifications for elective office.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Old business A.
All business, A, sir.
Okay, yeah, I have no problem with that. Consent would be fine.
Okay. And Santa, now that he's added that, do you still add your second to that?
Yep, second. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, so with that, does anyone have any problem with, accepting item A and then removing item B under old business? Okay, seeing no dissension, that is now accepted under old business. And under new business, item 12, we're going to discuss both of them. Thank you. So that's been approved for the agenda. Item 5 is an action item. Madam Clerk,
I
state.
need to vote.
Oh, yes, please. Sorry. Go ahead with call the question. Call the question, Madam Clerk.
Okay, Mr. Claus,
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson,
Yes.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mrs. Welch,
Yes.
Mr. Skips,
Yes.
Mr. Cromer,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes. Anyone wish to change your vote? I see no changes. So the agenda now passes. Now we go to item 5. You'll find approval of the minutes for the July 18th, 2022 meeting, pages 3 through 10. And because I wasn't there for the whole meeting, I won't vote on that matter because I don't know everything that was said or not said that night.
Move to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Second.
Motion by Welch to approve, seconded by Claus. Any discussion? Please call the question. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mr. Skips,
Yes.
Mr. Cromer,
Yes.
Mr. Jacobson,
Yes.
Mr. Claus,
Yes.
Mrs. Welch,
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So the minutes from 7/18/2022 are now approved as recorded. We go to communications from the mayor, item 6. So I will say that I spent a good little time with the folks. I think I kind of told you that in our last meeting somewhat, but I spent a good time out at KJMP on Friday night, July 22nd, and again Saturday night on July 23rd for Fire on the Ice. A lot of groups came together. You saw that there are many groups from around different states. The ones who did not make it here were the folks from Florida and Texas. But other than that, it was represented from Indiana, Missouri, Minnesota, Michigan, Colorado, just to name a few that I have off the top of my head. And the biggest night was Friday night. There were a little more than 200 people there, and altogether there were probably, the best they could tell, 300 different people that came out over those 6 nights. There were some returns that came to get more, and there were 30 people involved, and we provided them with a Yamaha keyboard, drums, amplifiers came from Flott, as well as speakers from Flott and cables, and we provided them with a generator too. And so it really kept down their cost. I have no idea what it cost for all those different denominations. There must have been, they were non-denominational, the best I can tell, but there may have been 5 different churches, if not more, that were involved in making that happen here. Coming up for me this week, you may have heard me talking about it already with Danny during the meeting of the whole. So we will be putting things together for the things that we have to do in regard to being prepared with our attorney with what we're doing with the wastewater treatment plant outfall and the environmental matters that are before us and the legal matters that are before us. So we're going to be meeting with Counselor Zane Wilson from CSG on August the 8th over that. If anybody wants to, they can stay in touch with the clerk and we'll find out pretty much how we're going to do that. I do expect that either the night of August 9th, if not early wee hours of August 10th, I'll be heading southbound to go to Anchorage and to Wasilla. I'll be meeting with Latitude 63 and with either going down or coming back with Wasilla's three Bears Corporation, as well as Mayor Josh Verhagen of Nenana, probably with Josh on the way home. So I expect I'll be out of town, Santa. Just so that y'all will know, there our staff meetings are now scheduled for Mondays. It used to be Tuesdays, but now it's on Mondays at 3 o'clock. That accommodates the clerk in helping us put together the things that are important to get to the newspaper on Tuesdays. So we're now going to meet 3 o'clock on Mondays instead of 11 o'clock on Tuesdays. That was a unanimous decision. Danny, that's probably news to you. So that's how we're going to do that. And then on August the 16th and 17th, I need to be in Anchorage to be on a panel to help do strategic planning for the University of Alaska Fairbanks in their endeavor to go into something the governor's put $100 million into, which is drone technology and how it applies to the programs that University of Alaska Fairbanks is doing and how that works in our national airspace system to include both Fort Wainwright's Aerodrome at Land Army Airfield and Eielson Air Force Base. So I will be doing that. So that's going to be very ambitious plan for me. So the trip down the highway and back next week will be done by vehicle, but the trip following week will be done by air. Sandy might be on standby just in case I can't get the kind of air arrangements I need to put me down in Anchorage on time on the 16th. I may have to fly out on Monday the 15th. But I prefer to fly out on Tuesday the 16th, to be honest with you. That's what I'm shooting for. And so with that, I think I've covered everything I can think of. And are there any questions of the mayor for item 7? So I see no questions of the mayor. So now I'm going to go to communications from department heads. So Danny, you've been gone the longest, so we'll put you up front, Danny.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Just want to say hello to everyone. I have been gone for 2 weeks, but I've been in constant contact with both of the supervisors for utilities and for public works. We're continuing to focus on the key areas. Again, the mayor mentioned some of those: outfall, infrastructure, and continuing summer operations. We do have summer hires that are still working for us, and we're anticipating those leaving us in mid-August. I did just return from 2 weeks of leadership training at the Army War College. It was a very very good experience for me. Sort of advanced problem solving in a nutshell. But I am back, and I'll be back in the office tomorrow morning.
And let me communicate with you, Danny, before we entertain any questions of you. So your staff did a really good job in your absence. They must really love you. You'll know that when you see your office tomorrow. And we do have all the carpet down. There was a small error that Plan Beck is going to fix tomorrow, which I was told in the beginning it would take them 6 weeks. They didn't measure the little kick plates go around the perimeter of each of the rooms, and they had only 5 inches instead of 6 inches. Well, tomorrow they're going to do whatever it does to make that right for us, because they actually got the stuff through a different source. So we'll have that fixed tomorrow. And the only thing I can see is that we're going to really have to buckle down to finish the cleanup of the chambers, because we are going to have an election there in precinct 175 on Tuesday the 16th of August, just to let you know that. So we've got about 2 weeks time to get that right. Any questions for Danny? Any concerns or welcoming words? Danny, welcome back, buddy. It was good.
Thank you.
All right. So we go next to Tricia.
Good evening, everyone. That mute button's kind of a tricky thing to do. Anyway, I just have a couple things to report that the mayor was able to get his response back to Alliance, and so they could finish the audit. That was done late last week, and we had until July 31st to get that audit loaded up on the federal single audit website. And since that was on the weekend, we got that loaded up this morning. Since the date was on Sunday, we got extended until today, and that was done. That was completed today. So I would think that we would have a bound audit that didn't say draft here this next week, and we will probably have that available to you at the next council meeting, which I understand possibly will be in the council chambers. If I'm incorrect, I thought that was the plan.
It is what we're trying for, but it looks like, well, I'll discuss it under ongoing projects, but it looks like that still may not happen, but I'll explain that under item 9. Tricia, you'll have for us next meeting our financials for.
I will. On the second meeting of the month, we'll have the financials. Michelle and I are helping her to get caught up on the bank reconciliations. We're behind a few months because of the parallel issue, and we plan on getting that caught up this week. So I think that the financials that we will receive next council meeting will be completely accurate. And that's all I have tonight, unless you have any questions.
Questions for Miss Tricia? So I know you worked hard, Michelle worked hard. You've also had hard work there Would you give an update on what's happening with the accounts payable clerk?
Oh,
Mhm.
yes, we had some interviews last week, and we hired a new full-time accounts payable clerk. She will start on the 15th of August. And I'm happy to tell you that Sally Church will be returning. She worked for us for a year prior, or a year and a half probably. And I think I'm gonna actually have a dream team. So I'm really looking forward to that. We will get synchronized, and we will be just, as soon as we get this Tyler thing worked out, I think we'll have a smooth sail from here on out.
Yeah, that Tyler, that still causes me headaches every Sunday
Right.
night trying to get ready for payroll the next day. It seems like
Right.
it never goes away.
Right.
It-
I sometimes I feel like it's like there's some little tricks and tips that we can kind of tell each other when we're like, it's a kind of a user thing to figure it out. So we'll
Right.
work with you.
There's things with me getting requisitions if I'm not approved at the general ledger level. So when I go to approve it, there's no place for me to highlight the green acknowledge mark. And so, and I'm not calling somebody at 11 o'clock at night to get me that approval. So I
Oh,
just have to
sure.
wait for the next morning. There's always something that comes up on that. So
Yeah, I think it's just working it out. It's going to be some growing pains, but I think we're slowly making steps forward at this point.
okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Jeremy Lindhag, Chief, is out. He's not back yet, is he?
No, sir.
Go ahead, Lieutenant. Tell us what's going on.
So good evening. Not much happening in the police department right now. Things are pretty quiet. The chief didn't have anything specific he wanted me to pass on to anyone. He did just send me a message and say he is running a little later than expected. So I'm not sure when he'll make it. So.
Okay, well, he'll be with us a little later tonight, I hope. Thank you for filling in his absence. I think that was important with Ada. Hope you can see why. Chief Heineken's next.
Hey, good evening, Mayor and Council. I do have a few things to share tonight. The first one is our new fire engine that we had ordered quite a while ago. I got an update from Hughes Fire and Equipment, and kind of as we predicted, the completion date has been pushed back a few more months. We've been in pretty good communications with them over the months, and we kind of suspected this was going to happen. So it's looking like it'll be a completion date of sometime early March. This is actually almost preferable for us, though. Shipping, if it would have been done in December as predicted, shipping that apparatus through the cold and then in-service testing it in the cold, there's a danger of things freezing. As much as they try to winterize that pump before that ships north, there's small lines that go to pressure gauges and such that can trap water. And so I really am not disappointed that it's going to come in March. We'll be done in March and then ship. We'll probably see it into April is what I'm guessing, which is pretty good time period for us to in-service a new apparatus. So I'm hoping this is the only delay and the only pushback we'll see, but I'm not going to hold my breath yet, but we'll see how it goes.
And it wouldn't be too bad, would it, Chief, if it got here in April?
No, actually, like I said, it's almost preferable rather than it showing up in February, early March when it's still cold.
Sure. Okay, thank you for that.
Yep.
Questions for Chief Heineken, too?
I got a little bit more, Mayor.
Oh, you do? I thought.
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
Yep.
Gee, I was getting rid of you.
Yeah, the next thing is I just really want to thank, Chief Dutry's not here, but the entire PD and their staff. They put on another great ceremony at the Memorial Park this last week. Their staff really go above and beyond and do a great job every year taking care of that. So I just wanted to give them proper recognition. And then the last thing I have is probably the most lengthy, but the most important, I feel. So I want to share with the City Council and the citizens of North Pole a little bit more about the emergency services in the greater North Pole Fairbanks area in general, the entire Fairbanks North Star Borough, really. The North Pole Fire Department, through mutual aid agreements and our EMS contract, are part of something much larger than just our individual department. All of the fire departments work together. We support each other. We plan everything together. We train together. We socialize together after hours. And most importantly, when those large scale events happen, we work on those emergencies together. Last week's windstorm was a prime example of how we work together. We had an ambulance that literally was on the old Nenana Highway on the other side of Esther during that windstorm. So that was a great example as to how we work together when needed. They were struck by wind far greater than ours here in North Pole. So the value and the strength gained from the partnerships we have actually was highlighted earlier this summer when the Esther Volunteer Fire Department was given a very, very short notice that they could not acquire the insurance coverage needed for their contract with the Fairbanks North Star Borough. They provide fire and EMS via contract, similar to we do EMS for the borough. And their insurance provider had dropped them due to some past claims. And the Interior Fire Service, like I said, we partner together, and literally overnight, a plan was developed to make sure the community of Esther was not without fire and emergency services, ambulance services during that time that Esther was not able to legally provide that service to their community. Luckily, it was very short term. It was just a 2-week extension that they really needed to be able to reach and find that insurance coverage to make them qualified in the borough's eyes to sign that contract. And the Chena Goldstream Fire and Rescue stepped up really, and for those 2 weeks, the Esther community, went with full emergency services, and it really shows how this works in the borough. So I really bring this to your attention. It reinforces the confidence that you have in your fire department. These unexpected circumstances and large emergencies quickly overwhelm local resources, and each department can only do so much. Our fire department is part of this outstanding organization, and throughout the interior, these partnerships together provide the greater good for the whole community. They really do. The one example I can list where we benefited from this is during the onset of COVID. The departments came together. We put together a plan because we predicted that with COVID, with the initial scare, that there'd be entire fire departments infected at times and could possibly take their entire fire department and staff out of service. So we put together a plan to try to help cover each other's jurisdictions, in case that happened. Well, as most of you know, the first week of 2021, our fire department, we had over half our staff come down with COVID. And it was a significant impact on us. It really was. So the remaining half stayed in service. They were healthy. They did everything appropriately to the plan. But there were only so much personnel. So it brought us down to a single response unit. And as there's, throughout the year, our units are out on multiple calls at the same time quite often. So this plan came together to help us as the city of North Pole. At no time was the city of North Pole without coverage during those 2 weeks while we recovered from COVID. So the citizens can rest easy. They have the knowledge that the fire department and the fire departments around us have our best interest. And if things do ever get to that point where we're overwhelmed by the nature of an emergency or other circumstances, there are plans in place to protect us all. I really do want to publicly recognize our partners. So I just want to give thanks to North Star Volunteer Fire Department, Salcha Fire and Rescue, Eielson Fire Department, Fort Wainwright Fire Department, Fairbanks Fire Department, Steese Volunteer Fire Department, University Fire Department, Esther Volunteer Fire Department, Chena Goldstream Fire and Rescue, and almost most importantly, our dispatchers at the Fairbanks Emergency Communication Center. Your fire department and our partners, they're dedicated men and women to making sure that someone is coming to your family's help if and when you ever need us. So, and that's all I have tonight. I will take any questions.
Yes, I would ask this, Chief Heineken. And oh, by the way, thank you for being present at the Fallen Heroes Memorial. I would have been anticipated Chief Dutra would have been with us to speak on that behalf. But for whatever reason, when I looked at the dignitaries, I don't know why your name wasn't on the list. Later on, I looked up and saw that you were sitting there in one of those very nice chairs. And whether or not you were speaker or not, you were there present to represent the North Pole Fire Department. Thank you for being there. That was a very nice event, and this is the first time we've held it that late in the afternoon at 4 o'clock. Is trying to get more people to be there. But I wanted to ask you, when the emergency notification service went down, what did you get from that when it was offline, when the whole borough system went down? What kind of feelings did you have about the vulnerability of that system?
Well, we actually had a debrief of that this afternoon, borough-wide. And a lot of learning has come from that. And just so everybody knows what happened is to be honest, once we looked at it, if it wouldn't have been for the communication center dispatch losing power, it would have just been a busy night. It would have been a very busy night for us, and we have those all the time. It wouldn't have been really a big deal, but the Fairbanks Emergency Communications Center went down. We were without dispatching services for over 2 hours, borough-wide, not just North Pole. And it was due to their backup generator had failed. Well, this was not due to any type of misuse or not using the generator. That generator actually was ran up the week prior. It's ran up on a monthly basis. It had a part failure. It literally just had a part failure at the wrong time. So the city, obviously that communication center is owned by the city of Fairbanks. Their chief of staff, is doing amazing work to make sure that that system is corrected, and they're looking at a backup to the backup. Something we wouldn't have dreamt. I mean, in the fire station, we have the same system. We have an emergency generator backup. Well, we really don't have a backup for that backup. So we might start looking into that also. But it put into perspective how vulnerable we can be as emergency services. But luckily that night, we all came together, and luckily the cell towers didn't come down. So all of the chief officers throughout the borough were very busy on cell phones, mostly via texting. And we literally were receiving emergency calls to our landlines at the station, or people walking to the station to tell you, hey, there's a tree on a power line on fire over here or over there. So we were kind of self-dispatching from our own fire departments using our cell phones. And then we did revert back to our old radio system that we don't use very often. So we're pretty rusty with it. So a lot of lessons were learned from this windstorm. Mostly that we definitely need to support our dispatchers and make sure they have that backup to the backup. Because when they go down, it is extremely difficult knowing that there's might be people calling 911 and we might not get that message. So we're working diligently with FECC and with the borough to make sure that that doesn't happen again.
Let me ask you this, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong. See, because I got notified twice. One at around 10:38 at night and another one at 28 after midnight. Did the system go down more than once where we didn't have backup power? Is that possibility that borough-wide it went down twice?
No, it only went down the one time. There was some different messaging that went out, but as far as to my knowledge, it only went down the one time. But it was 2.5 hours time frame before it could come back up.
Yeah, it was sort of confusing that I got multiple messages about it coming back online. So that's why it almost gave me the connotation that maybe we had more than one outage due to that storm. So do you have questions of Chief Heineken?
Just for the fun of it, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
The people at the animal barn at the fair would like you to come show a goat for them on Thursday.
For Chief Heineken to show a goat?
Heineken and the police too. They were asking for people who were considered not VIPs. What do they call them?
First responders?
Huh? No, actually they call it, it's like a VIP showmanship thing that they do on Thursday nights. I've done it a couple of times, once with a goat and once with a pig, which was a fun thing to do. But they were looking for like local politicians. They have some troopers coming. And so they wanted to know if I would please spread the word if there was somebody from first responders that were interested in doing this on Thursday night, and they can contact me for more information if you have somebody who just wants to go wrangle a goat.
Yeah, we might have that. Do we have to provide our own goat?
No, they provide you with a goat or a pig or whatever. It was a lot of fun. You know, and you go in and get to see the joys of showmanship. So it's a lot of fun. But let me know if you have somebody who might be willing to go have some fun with that.
Yeah, we sure will.
And any other questions? Any other goat ropes for the chief here? Okay. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Hey,
You're
Miss
welcome.
Ellie, we're going to turn to you next, Ellen Glab, for HR and for special assistant to the city. Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. I've got a pretty short one. Tricia spoke to, we picked up the AP tax clerk for her department, so that was wonderful. And then a good portion of the last 2 weeks for me has been dedicated to some HR issues that are confidential, so I'm not going to speak much on them. They've just required a lot of in-depth research and time. And then I plan on scheduling, because of that, we've been delayed on our next policy meeting along with Danny being out of town. I didn't want to do everything with people out of town. Our next policy meeting will probably be coming up once I can get with everybody, hopefully this week. And then our next safety meeting will be coming up also. I believe we spoke a little bit to that about making sure that we had floor plans and things like that for emergency exits and all of that fun stuff for safety. Other than that, that's pretty much what I have tonight. Anybody got any questions for me?
Do you ever catch your breath?
No,
Is there ever a dull moment?
very few and far between.
Okay, that's all I want to make sure of. Thank you for a good report. Any questions? No questions? Thank you. We'll go to the borough representative.
And that would be me. And that was a very long one. I can tell you that last Thursday. Lucky enough is via Zoom for me. For one, they started out with having a few people come in and testify, and then the person who had the gavel then said, "We are going to leave the reports from the representatives and the mayor till the end of business." So that meant I was there till almost, 10:30 or something like that. Lucky enough, they didn't decide to go further over. But one of the things that really took a lot of time was a particular property that had asked for the property exemption. And apparently, once there's a discrepancy between the paperwork that they do and the form that you fill out to go to to request your exemption from the taxes, and the actual rule that they made for it, or the actual ordinance that they made for it. So as far as the builder read it, once he had turned in his paperwork to ask for it, he was free to start building. Well, apparently somebody didn't think so. And they came to him and said, "Hey, you're not supposed to be building till it's been approved." He says, "That's not what the rules say." And he continued going. So they were going to deny him actually getting this, which means that there's at least several blocks and stuff in the North Shanley subdivision in Fairbanks off of College Road that some of them have just beginning parts of it. And they said substantial amount. So then they defined substantial amount for the building, which was interesting altogether. But eventually, after discussing this for almost an hour and having the builder come in and talk and everything else, they decided to postpone it to see whatever. I said that I thought it was kind of a bad form in some ways, that if there's a discrepancy between the two, the borough is the one that made the mistake of not defining it properly and leaving it up to. And in my book, if there's a discrepancy in that, it would be to the benefit of the person who didn't write it. And I think that's probably what's going to end up happening with it. We had in the running, I believe there were 4 different pieces of properties, all from Watson. and all over in the Patriot area. They were all done by consent, so they weren't even up for that. So they were all approved, so he will be happy to have that news for himself. They passed the same ordinance that we did for the information. They did not change theirs, though I did mention to them that maybe they should change it to the 400 words as the candidate would like to do, but they chose to just leave it as it was. What else are they doing? There was also a lot of discussion about extra money that they had, whether they were going to put it towards fixing stuff in the Pioneer Park, i.e. water and electric, that they don't know much about where exactly it's at, and it's causing some problems. Whereas the discussion in the group was pretty much, we're going to change that. You're not going to be able to spend all the money. So they cut his amount of money that he was allowed to spend down quite a bit. What the final number was, it went back and forth. I think it ended up that he could spend $1 million by the time he was finished.
Who could spend $1 million?
The mayor could spend $1
Yeah.
million on doing the updating the sewer and the electricity up to code for the area inside the little village part of
Okay.
Pioneer Park. What else was there? So, sorry, I have a lot of stuff written down here. Some of the things that the mayor came up with was, in his report was, one thing that's near and dear to my heart, that the construction at Hunter is almost done. School starts really early, and we don't want to have construction going on the roof while we have kids in there. They're in big progress on the reno of the library. Right now they're doing the plans and stuff like that, but it should be actually starting next year, truly getting some of the stuff done that was all in the big plan for all the different things they want to spend their money on.
Is that the Hunter Library?
No, this is the big library in town.
Oh, Wien, okay.
Yeah. The SS and Nana, unfortunately, is also being delayed due to cost of getting it renovated, though parts of it are in good shape now, and they want all the people who are like us, elected people, to come and take a tour on there to see what it is, so that we'll be happy to spend the people's money on getting it all finished. So rifle range is also running a little bit late. They ran into something down there, so they will open in late August instead of beginning of August. Skate park that they did is almost done. Grail Park is complete. And on the 5th of August, they opened the dog park down on the south side, and they had hot dogs for people to enjoy down there, they said. He was very upset about something. Griffin Park has been vandalized. The bathrooms had an extreme amount of, and will not be opened again, probably for the rest of the year. If not, they will go all the way till next spring, before they can fix that. One thing he said, that the amount of damage that was done there was almost so much that they thought that somebody had some kind of mechanical, like a bulldozer or something like that, because it was that much damage to it. And then finally, he wanted to make sure that everybody knows that the 988, the suicide prevention line on your phone, is now up and running. And for everybody to spread the word to call 988, and you will be connected with a suicide hotline counselor that is trained to deal with such emergencies. And that is the end of my project here.
Thank you, Madam Borough Representative. I hope that maybe in the very beginning, if you can go way back to when she began here, is there's an issue of how they wrote their ordinance for who's going to get what in tax abatement. So we need to know that we don't have to pattern our ordinances after necessarily the way the borough did things. I had to learn that the hard way when it was CARES Act time, by the way. So I think that's one reason I'm not chomping at the bit just to jump on board and copycat what they do, paste and cut, because I think somewhere in there, help me if I'm not mistaken, Madam Rep, but the person who was building said there's nowhere that tells him that once he's made a submission for the application, that he now has to wait for them to give a Mama Mia slip for him to start. Am I correct?
That was how he read and I'm not sure because it was a little, whether it was the paperwork. I think the paperwork has a place for him to actually say, has it started yet? Have you started construction? And there's a place for him to check it off. And I think there was an issue because he had applied in his own name and then, but the property was originally, he applied for the builder's name or whatever, but it had to be applied for in the owner of the property's name. And it's just a matter about, he's both entities, but he had put one on and not the other. So in between that, they asked him also when he finally put it in the right way was, have you started construction? And he said, no. And he checked off the thing and said he had not started construction. Then the assessor apparently went out to look like 6 weeks later. And of course they had broken ground and they have, already put, one of them already has sidewalls up, part of it. Another one has a cement laid for it, and another one has some other partial stuff. But there's like eight lots or 8 buildings that are going up, and I don't know how many units are inside each of them, but there was a lot of stuff going up. And he says, we can't wait. They keep saying we need them. And that's the same thing here. We need them and they need to build. And so I just thought that it would be kind of bad form for them to, when they did something wrong between the two, that it wasn't clear. So if it's not clear, it should be in his benefit. They did say, however, that he should have gone back to the office and asked when somebody came and told him he couldn't do it. He put his finger on the paperwork and said, yeah, see here, it says, it doesn't say nothing about that. So,
Okay.
And he said, so hopefully we'll do better when it comes to the point of us doing it. And I'm thinking also about Ada, if they have already, because there's a limited amount of time for them to actually request that tax abatement. And I'm not sure.
I was asking about what time they had for a timetable.
I'm not sure how long the open season is for them to be able to apply for it for the borough side, because that's the only place they can apply right now anyway. So
I think it's December 31st of 25, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Any questions for the borough rep? Okay, I don't see none. Before I go to the clerk, I will say, Chief Dutra, you're with us now, Steve? Chief Dutra? I see.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm on a phone in the car, but I'm here.
Very good. Chief, you want to speak to the fallen heroes and anything else in your department? And the good information you have about your shooting range now?
Yeah, the Fallen Heroes Memorial Service went well. Wasn't as attended by as many folks as I would have liked. I think the weather had a lot to do with that. But my staff worked really hard setting it up, taking it down, and I appreciate everyone's effort to make that happen. The fire department helped out and Public Works helped out. Got the lawn mowed and the area cleared. So I was really thankful for that. The other thing about the range that the mayor's talking about was we had a minor development on the range in town. TVSA has a space that they're trying to expand, and they needed someone to write a grant for the NRA. So I stepped up and volunteered for that. During that process, it was realized that they needed a match to help make this grant come to fruition. So North Pole PD and Fairbanks PD have decided to offer up about $5,000 a piece to help make this range converted into a 25-yard range. So we're currently working with the TBSA board to see if they're willing to accept our $10,000, and that would gift FPD and North Pole PD a chance to use that range indefinitely for indoor qualifications. Although that solves a temporary problem, it does not solve our long-term problem. But we're super excited about this if it actually happens, and I'll keep the council posted.
And one last thing, Chief, any updates on headway to recruitment in your department?
Yeah, we have a couple of folks in the recruitment process. They look promising, but I never count my chickens till they actually happen. We did close out the lieutenant's position, and we added with two prospects. So we'll start the long process of testing and oral boards, and we'll see how that shakes out. So we're excited to see. We have two, one local and one from, or both local, but one from the department and one outside the department.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Chief Dutra now that we have him with us? I see none. Thank you, Chief. And if you want to have your lieutenant, tell him thanks for filling in your absence. That was important. Appreciate it. Madam Clerk, guess what? You're next.
All right, good evening, everybody. So I don't have a lot to report on tonight. I did want to let you guys know that we had our revised kickoff meeting last week for the new website. That was super exciting. I invited Melanie from the Public Works Division to come and attend it. I also invited Tammy and Michelle from the fire department and Allison from the police department. Allison, got married. So she was out for a lot of last week, so she was not able to attend. But Ellie also was there. Special thank you to Tammy and Michelle. They got me some amazing pictures that some of the fire employees have been taken of training exercises and different things that they've done around town. So I got some amazing pictures to use for the website. I also managed to print out some of them and hang them in the chambers too. I did that this afternoon. So the chambers is looking fantastic. I'm super excited about it. I can't wait to show you guys. Otherwise that I was invited to a PIO training that's going to take place in October by the Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. So that'll be like my first big training for the PIO. I'm super excited about that. And otherwise that's about it.
What about the election?
Oh, yeah, how about that? So we do have 2 open seats and we have 2 candidates. I'm very happy to say that Mr. Jacobson turned in his paperwork, so yay on that. And we also have Chandra Clack, who is a citizen. She's served on a couple of boards before, and she's super excited about this opportunity.
And I'd like to take time to thank you, Jeff, for considering that. That's a big step for you, considering the big hat you wear already for Fairbanks and bigger hat you wore as a former mayor. And so I'm very happy for that. Any questions for the clerk? Yes, Ms. Welch.
The newspaper mentioned a third person. Was that person not qualified?
Right. Yeah, there was a third person. She came in while I was not here, and it turns out she doesn't live in the city.
That's what I kind of thought when I looked at it. She said she lived in Fairbanks on her Facebook. So,
well, no, she does. She has a North Pole address. It's just not in the city. Yep.
a good try.
Any other questions for the clerk? So guess what? We have a surprise person with us tonight. Where'd she go off to? She was there. Where did our attorney go off to there?
Oh, I don't know.
Did she fall off?
Yeah, I don't see her.
She was there. Trying to get to her. Let me see. Madam Clerk, would you go into discussing ongoing projects about the chambers and where we're at with that, with Alaska Universal Productions, what you know of it?
Oh, sure. So we're still waiting on all of our equipment. He said it's slowly trickling in. We did get the TV set up, which looks fantastic on its snazzy little cart. So hopefully we'll have it by the end of the year, but I think some of the electronic stuff was taking a little bit longer than we anticipated. We are also working on setting up some offices in there, and the glass doctor here in North Pole is working on that for us. So he's given us a quote. We've given him the okay. He already has the glass in stock. He needed to order some steel for the intersecting of the glass panels. So he is ordering that. It's being sourced out of Seattle. So hopefully he was kind of thinking 8 weeks total or so on that. So hopefully by like mid-September, we'll have that all finished. So and that will be moving my office into there so that Ellie will have an office space here. You're on mute.
Is it appropriate to talk about the glass doctor coming across to build the
Yeah, I
glass?
just did.
You just did. I missed you. I was trying to do something offline at the time. Okay, that sure will be nice when that's done. So we're trying to put it all together. And that takes us to citizens' comments, I believe. 10 citizens' comments. Anyone waiting for citizens' comments?
Nope.
Okay, seeing none, I show citizens' comments is closed at 7:52. May I get someone to make a motion for us to take a 5-minute stand down?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
so we'll retire. We'll suspend the rules for 5 minutes. We'll be back at 7:58. Thank you. I wonder if she lost electricity. You might call her, because I tried. She's ready to go. Trying to give a light.
Melissa, you may want to mute the mayor. He has a habit of walking off of there without
Say again? Yeah, okay. Welcome back, council mates and staff. We're back on. It's 7:58 now. Thanks for that 5-minute break. So we're going to move into new business. Now, item 12, ordinance 2216, an ordinance of the city of North Pole to amend the 2022 operating budget. You find that on pages 14 and 15. The sponsors are Chief Dutra and myself. And Ms. Fogarty, do you want to speak to those, please, for the record?
Yes, thank you. So it's an ordinance to amend the 2022 budget in order to pay for the final bill of the police department addition out of the city funds. We've already expended all the COVID funds. And then to put some money towards the festival fund in order to pay for the 4th of July expenditures, plus to make that fund whole. It was kind of in the red. And so if you have any questions, I'd be willing to answer them.
And I do believe earlier there had been a question from Mr. Skips, if I'm not mistaken, but I think that was answered back, David, because Chief Dutra wasn't there to answer that. But Chief Dutra, that the building has now been satisfactory in its acceptance from Stanton, Ron Stanton, correct, Chief Dutra?
99.8% yes.
Okay. What's the point two?
There's one phone line that wasn't installed. And of course, the fix for the sewer drain, we hope will work, but we're not 100% sure. So for the most part, yes.
Okay, very good. So with that in mind, are there any questions? Can I go ahead and introduce this ordinance 2214? Chief Dutra, we'll go ahead and introduce that together then. Are there any questions concerning it? Do I get someone that will make a motion?
Mayor, move to approve ordinance 2216.
I have a motion from
Second.
Santa, and I want you to know that it's ordinance 2216, even though on the thing I'm looking at, it says 2214. I don't know why it says that. Does anybody know why the main title page says 2214? Was that a cut and paste problem?
It may have just picked up the page numbers 14, 15.
Yeah. Yeah, it just says in bold fiscal note 2022 ordinance 2214, but it should say ordinance 2216, shouldn't it?
Yes.
Ms. Fogarty, will you be able to make a
Yeah,
correction?
I will correct that next time. That I see what you're saying, and that's my fault.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so it's been introduced, it's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion necessary? Any citizens' comments? Seeing no citizens' comments, Madam Clerk, would you please call the question? I said that out of order, by the way.
Mr. Jacobson,
Yes.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mr. Claus,
Yes.
Mr. Skips,
Yes.
Mrs. Welch,
Yes.
Mr. Cromer,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Does anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing no changes, this now will be moved, advanced for possible adoption in our August 15th meeting. We now come to item B, approval of the mutual development agreement between the City of North Pole and ADA, we call that, for the Howard properties. You'll find it on pages 16 to 19. And here to help us with this is our attorney, Renee Broker. She's listed on our website as Zane Wilson. She's posing as Zane, but Renee, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Mayor.
Thank you. Can you appear on camera for us or not?
Sure. Let me just hit that button,
Okay.
just so
And,
everyone will know it's not Zane.
It's really you. Okay.
It's really me.
Where are you at right now? Your office or home?
No, I went home during the break.
Okay, I was worried you might have had a power failure, electric storm or something.
No, my computer decided it wanted to update while in the middle of the meeting.
Well, of course, why else? Would we have all those automatic updates?
Yes.
Do you want to walk us through this at this juncture? Seeing how Ada's not on board with us right now.
Oh, Ada's not here?
No, they decided not
Oh.
to stay with us.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
Barnwell was with us from the newspaper and everybody else is council or directors of the city.
sure. Okay. Well, let me, before I even start with the actual mutual development agreement, I just wanted to say a couple of words with respect to, given the fact that this is going to be expending, if you approve it, as you know, a fairly large dollar amount. And it's always important to keep in mind that when you expend money, the money has to be expended by the Constitution for a public purpose. Now, Ada is a public entity, but their public purpose is different than your public purpose. And so the Supreme Court has largely said that's a decision that the individual borough assemblies and city councils get to make, really largely within their discretion. But when you're looking at the mutual development agreement and trying to decide what terms that you need to keep the public purpose obligation in mind, because while a court's going to largely defer to your opinion, the agreement has to reflect that. And I'll just say, just as an example, because it's somewhat of an issue here. If you put in that the public purpose was to increase property tax revenues, but it's not in the city and it's not annexed, then there's going to be a disconnect between the public purpose as you state it and what you ultimately agree with. So whatever you as city council members decide is the public purpose for this, we just need to make sure that that is actually gets reflected and is shown in this agreement. Okay, so that's sort of the broader picture. Turning to the actual agreement itself, Mayor, can you tell me, do they have the version that has Ada's comments or the one that we proposed?
I think it's the one that we proposed that you will find. Madam Clerk, can you share your screen and show her what I'm looking at on pages 16 to 19? Share your screen, and eventually you may need to share, depending upon what
Yeah.
Madam Counselor wants us to see. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Well, the first part, so actually, I don't see even here, Mayor, that it has my revisions.
Do you have the one, Madam Clerk, that has the revisions that Counselor provided us? I think those are done in red, strikeovers. Do you have that, Madam Clerk? And also she gave us an attachment to a legal finding that she was referring to.
I don't have that one, but hold on a second.
Well, we can still talk about it if you don't have it. I can just kind of talk about issues.
She just has to go. She has to go get it.
Oh, okay.
She does have it because we saw it earlier today.
So one of the issues was actually reflected in this first page, but this isn't the most recent version. But basically, Ada wanted explicit language in there that the city would agree to pursue and designate the property as a military facility zone. And some of these comments are going to be somewhat circular because it has, for us to do that, it has to be in the city. So that would mean we would have to have a successful annexation. Oh, there we go.
One is coming up right now.
There we go. So you'll see.
That, so that I may read that, Madam Clerk. because of my eyesight. Just enlarge it some more, please. There's your box down there somewhere, the view of it. Go ahead.
At the bottom right corner where you see like the 100%.
Yeah.
So I'm
There
talking,
you go.
yes, we're in the first whereas, and you'll see that I have crossed out the city will seek designation of the property as a military facility zone. You may ultimately, I mean, if you annex it, it'll be in the city boundaries and I think therefore in a military facility zone. But otherwise, if it stays outside the city, then only a municipality that has that property in its boundaries can seek that designation. So that's why we deleted it there. And then there's really, some of the stuff is really not as significant. So whenever it said develop within the city, we changed it to all applicable governmental authorities because we're not the only, if it's not within the city boundaries, then the city rules aren't going to apply in any event, and we certainly want to pick up any other state or borough or any other regulations that they would need to comply with.
Is that what
can
you
you go
mean
to
by circular, by chance?
Excuse me?
When you talk about things being circular, how
Yes,
they all come back around. Right?
yes, they all come back around, and they're largely come back to whether or not this property will ultimately be within the city boundaries or not.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, can you go to the next page? Okay, so then the sort of maybe the biggest question between us and Ada right now is this whole question of tax abatement. And you'll see that I had redlined that out. So two issues there, go back to the circular thing. Our tax abatement status really doesn't matter if it's not in the city. Right? So assuming it was ever in the city, that's going to be a process that would take a certain amount of time. It's not something done, in 30 days. It's probably done in a year or two. And at that point, that's whether or not the city determines to extend a property tax abatement, then that will be a legislative decision that will be made by the city council at that time. And it's legally inappropriate at this point to seek to bind whatever city council might want to make that decision because that's a legislative decision. Even at the borough, when it comes to these sort of property-specific tax exemptions, that's a discretionary act by the Borough Assembly. I think your borough representative was talking about that process. So that comes up in front of the Assembly, and the Assembly has to go yes or no. It's discretionary. It's not like the senior citizen property tax exemption that's sort of more generally and globally applied. So we've largely pushed back upon any suggestion that at this point we would attempt to commit to a legislative decision that would have to be made in the future if and when this property ever came within the boundaries of the city. And then if you can scroll down a little bit, I can only see the first part of if we go, then we have the whole question about city utilities. So as it was written, it was really initially talking about city provided water and sewer. In some emails and in their discussion tonight, they started talking a little more globally. And I think Councilmember Jacobson was talking to them about snow removal. So again, this question goes back first to whether it's ever becomes property within the boundaries of the city. And second, if it does not, there's a state statute that says, I think as you probably know, you can extend utility service extraterritorial, and the city of North Pole has done that. But that statute is limited to specific powers. Not every power you have can be extended extraterritorially. And snow removal is not within that group. Now, provision of streets is EMS services, cemeteries, things like that. But when you're talking about more sort of specific city services, that does not get extended extraterritorially. So we have pushed back to say that, and I added this language to say, hey, we're not going to right now obligate the city to provide these utilities, because first of all, if it becomes even within the city, you have to comply with city ordinances and you have to get permits, and it's a process, and it can be a process that is not without cost to the city. So we've also written in a section that basically says, anything that we obligate ourselves in here is going to be ultimately subject to being funded by the city council. Now, that's a fairly standard language and something we always recommend because, as you know, an appropriation of funds is always up to the city council. But I also try to advise my municipal clients not to ever have to use that trigger, because there's certain good faith moral obligations that you don't want to start saying you'll do when it's not 100% certain that it will be funded, or at least, in good faith. And that's a question that the city council at that time may or may not decide that they want to spend the funds to do. Then in C, we're having a discussion about how long of a period of time do they get to get this done. I think there was a question earlier to say, hey, the military wants this now. Developing something 5-10 years from now, we may miss that boat. So we want to make sure before we make this investment that this is something that's really going to aid the problem that we're trying to fix. So you can see in the red language I added that they have to, if it has to timely occur, the development, and timely goes back to they have this initial 2-year period, and we can, but in the next sentence, mutually agree to extend it. So for some reason, we think they're making a good faith effort, everything's fine, and we want to agree to extend it 6 months or a year, that there's no reason that would be perfectly appropriate under the existing language. But what they want to add is time to say, okay, so if you go, if development of the property does not timely occur, which you see in red, they want to add the language, and ADA is unable to cure such default in the development within a reasonable time. So that injects a level of uncertainty and an argument as to what time period they would get to cure when they know from the beginning that they get 2 years and any other additional time that we decide to give. So we sort of wrote in somewhat of a, I don't want to call it a poison pill, but a clawback to basically say, if you're not doing this and we won't agree to extend that time, then you need to either give us the money back or at our option, deed the property back to us. And they want this time to cure.
May I ask a question at this juncture?
Sure.
If under item C, we claw it back and the option is the city gets the deed of the property back. In other words, it's not annexed into us. What are we doing with the property then? Are we setting a white elephant?
No, well, hopefully it's not. If you think it's a white elephant, then I would say at that time you would say you want your reimbursement.
Yeah.
If for some reason it's turned into a golden elephant and it's worth twice the value, then you have the option to say just deed us the property back.
Right, because that's where I see the conjunction or.
Right.
So either or.
Either or, yes.
Either or. That's what I'm
I
trying
wrote that to give the city flexibility.
the option.
Yes.
The property may very well be worth more than when we bought it.
It may.
They may very well, May or may not, but if it did,
Right.
it would be say, hey, we'd be stupid not to have the deed to the property back because we could do something with it. I hope
Yes.
the council understands that what they want us to do is give the deed to them, is what they want us to do.
Right. Under the agreement, we would deed it to them, and that's why we're talking about them deeding it back to us if they don't act promptly.
We
Because
don't
remember,
we don't necessarily define to them, do we? What, in other words, we have to mutually agree if it's not timely.
right, so they're going to get under this unless we mutually agree, unless the city agrees, they'll get 2 years to do the initial infrastructure phase of development. Now, they have said, and I think it's appropriate, that we really need to define better what we mean by that, because it will be a critical term in that we don't want to get into a discussion or argument about what that means.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. And really, this goes back to the public purpose that I started this discussion with, is that if your public purpose is to ensure that, we're providing military housing when the military needs it, then the time is ticking on that. And that's, you have to have some control over that to make sure that you get the public purpose that you're trying to achieve.
Yes.
All right, then I think the next sort of area we get into, I think that's really,
Compliance,
yeah, I'm sorry, Mayor, what?
the compliance section, section 6.
Yes, there, I think I talked about this earlier, that we're turning it into all applicable laws. So if it's in the city, then the city laws will apply. If not, then whatever laws that are applicable will at least have to be built to that standard.
Okay.
I'm trying to, so in their response to us, they indicated they were looking for, after they looked at these revisions, they were looking for an agreement that we in good faith would pursue the military facility zone, which is why I started off talking about that. They want an agreement that we would pursue annexation, although, again, I think I talked about that, but again, that's going to be ultimately a decision that the city council will have to make.
And that's a political decision.
And it's a political decision. That's my euphemism for that's a city council decision.
Right.
Renee, it's not just the city council. Doesn't the legislature have to approve it, or the boundary commission?
Well, ultimately, yes, the annexation, you have to get voter approval, you have to get, but they're not asking us to commit to a successful annexation, just to commit to an attempt.
Okay.
Well, and to answer you, Jeff, we have approximately February 2nd is when you do it before the legislature, and they have 45 days to either say yes or no. And if they say no, then we have till the end of the legislative session to appeal it and to successfully finish the appeal. That's pretty tough. Okay, I'll add more to that in a minute, but that's the boundary time. That's what the Boundary Commission shared with me.
Right, and you first go through the process of the Boundary Commission and get a Boundary Commission decision. Before then, it either goes to the voters for approval or to the legislature. So it's not something that is done without a significant decision to devote resources and time. Because just doing the application and providing all the information and going to the hearing of the Boundary Commission is, again, something that the city council would have to decide that it wants to do, number one, and second, would want to fund. If it want, I mean, because you don't want to do it and not do it in good faith.
Right.
So
Mayor,
Renee,
I had
go ahead, Santa Claus.
Thank you.
Y'all please use your hand and go through.
I did. My hand's been up for a while.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I can't see it because your hand is in a background that's got a colored wall on it, and your hand doesn't.
All right.
show.
Thank you.
Thank you for speaking up.
So quick question, Renee at Santa. During the presentation earlier this evening, Ada mentioned something about they're going to take this property, assuming we've deeded it to them, and turn it into a specific purposes company, not
Mhm.
necessarily Ada.
Right.
So that kind of raised a red flag to me, especially since the military facility zone doesn't seem to address that sort of component from what I can tell.
Yeah, and there really is very little in here about how that property would be managed or owned once we, sign it over. And so to the extent those things are important, then they should be in here. But however they do it, I think I heard a 30-year time period is when they estimate their payback. And so they would hold it through some sort of special purpose entity. But as I understood it, it would be held by Ada just through like an entity owned by them. But
I would hope so, but that's not what I heard.
Right. And you are absolutely correct to say it does not say anything about that in here.
Thank you.
Nowhere. And that's a valid point to make.
All right. So I think that really ends sort of my comments specifically, but I'm certainly happy to answer questions, and to the extent, that you have input about things that you would like negotiated, it would, like what Councilmember Santa Claus just mentioned, that would be helpful also.
So Renee, I have a follow-up question.
Thank you, Councilman Jacobson. I see your hand. Thank you.
Okay. Number 11 says binding effect, and I'm disturbed that this agreement shall run with the land, because once Ada turns this over to a private developer to build an apartment building or single family homes, that's a new ownership. And does the clock restart again with tax rebates? No property tax, and if they sell that house again, the clock starts with them 10 years too, or?
No, I'm assuming that when they talk about the tax abatement, and I think they've specified this, that they're talking about the one similar to what the borough has adopted. And the borough one starts at when the property is constructed. So I think you have to have at least 5 residential units, and then it starts to run. And in fact, they have discussions about that'll actually terminate, as I understand it, upon a transfer of ownership, unless that, ownership transfer was sort of rolled into the initial application. So like if Ada or the city went and got approval and said, hey, we're going to be transferring this to Ada, or Ada went and got approval and said, hey, we're going to be transferring this to this special entity, then you can get that approved at the beginning, that change in ownership. Otherwise, you're going to put your property tax exemption at risk with the transfer.
Thank you.
Who else has questions for our counselor while we have her here?
Mayor, I have a sort of a follow-up question for that.
You've got the floor. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Number 12 says subsequently enacted state or federal law. If the military facility zone component of the military decides they're not going to have that anymore, that would change things, I think.
Absolutely.
And also our past experience here with the city has been the military's asked us to help build housing here, and then they didn't follow through for the military's end of things years ago. And there's still people living here in the community that were contractors and builders back then who remember that very clearly.
Yes, this agreement is going to pick up any changes in law, including zoning laws, anything that a state or federal law, or really, it talks about correlating zoning amendments. So that's also borough.
Right, but I'm just thinking if the military, the Department of Defense decides it's no longer going to have military um, facility zones.
Right.
Then what?
Yeah. Yeah, but they are only asking us to make what I would call a good faith effort to, if and when it was in the city, to ensure that it's in a military facility zone, and what happens after that. And, if a tax exemption is attached to that or whatever, would not be something that we would have to fix or have an obligation to do anything for.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Welch, you have your hand raised.
Yes, so two things on that. I don't think that the military is the one that creates or decides anything on a military facility zone. I think that's something that was done from the state level or whatever. Has nothing to do with what the military wants. They could, however, decide all of a sudden they didn't want to have a base here, which would be, I guess, very unlikely with the current situation like that. What I wanted to ask Zane here, I keep looking at the name like that. I mentioned this in our little discussion earlier off the air. There was I just have a little bit of a qualms with the way that it seems like these people are proceeding. And I don't know if you get kind of that same feeling. I would say for me to vote for this, I would have to have a lot more information on exactly how they want to proceed once we hand them that piece of property, because I still don't see it. To me, it sounds like they're going to just pick up and sell the lots. Well, that doesn't, in my mind, it doesn't say that we're going to get houses on there, because that's what we need. We need to get houses on there. And if we're going to put our public money out, our citizens' money out there to buy a piece of property, that we won't have any benefit from it until it gets put into the point of belonging to our city, unless we annex it. So I don't know. I just don't like the whole thing in the first place, and some of the other stuff that happened around it, and the way they kind of went underhanded about some of the talking to people and stuff like that. It just kind of makes me wonder if this is the right thing to do for us. So I don't know what you can, if you.
Well, I will say one thing in that I guess it does go back to what you determine is the appropriate public purpose and whether this agreement gets you that. And so, that is certainly something I think that the city council needs to seriously consider and make sure that whatever agreement that you adopt or approve, that it actually requires that. So that linkage has to be there. I completely agree with that. I will say there is language, and I think it's on the second page, where it talks about the development of the property under number 4, where they do commit to, it says Ada shall develop roughly 100 residential housing. So it's not completely unstated what they are supposed to do. Now, who's going to ultimately own it and how it's going to be managed and all those things are not stated there, but that it has to be for residential housing and have these sort of road survey, these sort of things. There is the basics of that there. Now, certainly not in any detail, and not like what we heard earlier today, the breakdown of how many 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms and, that sort of thing is not there.
The one thing, I'm going to raise my hand there, and I see you, Jeff, you have your hand raised, that I want to interject there is, I've been on this housing task force since way back last July with Fedco and the borough and all the different interior Alaskan builders. So everybody who's involved have been on it. And at no point did I ever see, including the Major General from the United States Air Force Housing Assessment Branch, General Wilcox, who visited me in person here in my office August of last year that they were looking for a 900 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath type of domicile. I don't care if you call it townhome, apartment, whatever you call it. It was significantly larger than that based on Air Force requirements based on your rank. So I can't imagine a 2-bedroom, 1-bath at 900 square feet. So if that's the size of 2-bedroom, God only knows what a 1-bedroom apartment is in size. But and the fact that to keep the cost down, they didn't consider putting up any type of garages or any place where you store your vehicles, which would help in snow removal, even though that may be at the expense of whoever builds these places and owns and operates them to do the snow. But there's a lot of things there that I ask myself about what are we going to have out of this when it's all said and done. So what's it going to look like, and is it going to be a place that we would be proud to say is part of North Pole? You know, people that would consider that their home. So I don't know, Madam Counselor, I'd ask you at this juncture, have we reached a point where we need to go further with this tonight, or can we continue to talk about it in the open like we are?
Is that directed to me, Mayor?
Yes. Yes,
I'm
yes.
sorry, when you say council, it confuses me whether
No,
you're talking about.
I said counselor.
Okay.
Renee. Okay.
I apologize. Yeah, I think that there's probably a couple of things that we might want to talk about in executive session, particularly if the city council has any, more specific ideas about, the negotiations and what they would like to see and or not see.
Let me take us there if you like.
Okay.
So as the mayor, I'd like to motion to have an executive session to have a candid discussion with our city attorney regarding matters that may immediately and significantly impact our city's finances, specifically the proposed mutual development agreement with Ada for the Howard property, to include negotiation strategies and advice regarding the risk and benefits of proposed language.
Second.
Second.
Okay, so I have a seconded there. So